Let's start off during the beginning phase. With having now, remember we only have about an hour today, and each of these segments are short. So, with having three marriages, I don't know. I was in one myself. I guess we could talk for 3 or 4 hours on each marriage, but we'll hit the high points. So, first question to throw out to you: if I heard you right, you kind of got married you kind of got married without I don't want to say without thinking because you did think, but it was kind of it sounded like it was a little bit rushed. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, it was. I was in the church. I came up in the church, and as a young man, I was in my 20s. I got saved when I was 11, 12 years old, and then I kept on in the church, and I joined the church when I got seriously committed when I was about 16, 17 years old, seriously to the core committed.
Okay.
And all the time in church, you see the younger guys getting married, and then they have their kids, and you look at yourself, and you're out there ministering, you're out there helping, you're out there caring, and you live alone, because I lived on my own as well after I was 19, 20 years old. And you get to the place of that loneliness, that void. And I'm not one who really wanted to go through relationships, as in girlfriend, boyfriend, where you kind of, I use the term, I don't want to be taster tested, a lot
Yeah, I love that. I
of
don't want to be taste tested. That is, I love that, man. That's
in
epic.
the, in the church. One of the things that I was seeing is a lot of young men in the church, and the young girls, and they get involved, and they become sexually active, and then they don't want that person, and then they're sexually active with somebody else, and they don't want that person, and it gets to a place where they lose themselves, they lose their focus. And I think marriage for them becomes just to have a sexual relationship. It's not something about family. And for me, that was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to have a family, and that was my focus. So when I got my first opportunity to get married, I met this wonderful person in the church. I didn't get to know them so much. I knew about their love for God and their passion and all that good stuff, but I didn't take the time to develop a relationship, a bond, and I didn't do the counseling. So I
So,
think
so
that's
yeah. So let me ask you a question. Pardon me for interrupting, but let me ask you a question because I think you just said a real key point. The fact that you didn't take the time. I believe in love at first sight. And granted, maybe I'm not the best because my ex-wife and I fell in love at first sight, and now we're divorced. But we actually did fall in love, and I guess I wonder from a because I've known a lot of people in very strong faith-based relationships. I wonder, do you feel that you went so quickly because it was a faith-based relationship, so you had everything else in common, and it wasn't that you fell deep in love, or do you believe you at that point had fallen in love with her, and everything else was just it was, I'll say, nice because she was religious and part of the church and everything.
well. Let me pull the wisdom of all four of my relationships into this answer, because if I had answered back then, I might answer you in youthful ignorance. Youthful ignorance meaning that you feel the emotion, you feel the passion, and people telling you no, this is not a good idea because they're older, and you never see the little bullet points that they see. So I personally know, I don't believe, I know that you can go on a trip and meet somebody right there and marry that person and spend the rest of your life with them, and no problems, no troubles. I know that because I now understand some different dynamics of the associations, the neuro associations, the spiritual associations, and the physical associations, or should you use the word attractions. So I do believe that you can meet somebody immediately, fall in love with them, they fall in love with you, you get married, you have a family, and nothing never happens. I believe that 100%. Um, but when I use the term I didn't take enough time, I'm speaking from the fact that I was much younger. and I didn't have a lot of experience in some of the dynamics that are necessary for a relationship to be healthy. For example,
Ah,
quarreling and arguing is extremely healthy. As a matter of fact, if you have a relationship where there's no quarreling and there's no arguing and there's no debate, there's something lacking.
yeah.
And there's a facade that with time, the possibility of something that would trigger a negative response or an immediate "I'm done with this" would shock a person because they never realized that what was missing is that intricate friction that a relationship needs to keep it dirty, clean, up, down, going, coming, happy, sad. Those emotions are necessary for a healthy relationship. And that's what I believe.
And I think to further that thought, would you agree that if that happens early on, you end up learning how to deal with the friction so that when the major things happen, you can deal with it better. Whereas if you have no friction and all of a sudden something really bad happens, you've never learned how to deal with it with your partner. You just have, it is what it is, it ends up it ends up being something that'll tend to destroy a marriage much quicker than if you learned how to deal with it. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
Well, I personally, if a couple tells me they want to get married and they're interested in getting married, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't I base this on my experiences and the wisdom that I've attained, and forgive me for others who think differently. But if a person wants to get married and they're all butterflies and everything is wonderful, their parents love them, they love their parents, and they're happy, they don't quarrel, they don't argue. As far as I'm concerned, they're not candidates for marriage, personally. But if somebody comes now and they tell me, "Man, I'm always quarreling with her. She gets under my skin. She gets me so annoyed and she gets me so edgy. I don't even know. She's from another planet and I'm from." If somebody tells me that, I'm saying, you know what, you guys are ready to get married. And let me explain what I'm saying when I say that. I don't want you to kind of take it to an extreme. But what I'm trying to say is that you're engaging.
Yep.
You're being real. The person is not ashamed to let you know they're angry. They're not trying to keep you, so they pretend not to be angry when they are and just grit their teeth. You see them angry. They feel comfortable to be themselves, and I think that that's one of the healthy things for a relationship, when individuals are comfortable with themselves and they conflict and they clash, but it's not about us separating or going our ways. It's about us learning to deal with the dynamics that are a part of this relationship.
Exactly, and that's an epic point, and it's so I think it really for me, and I know it's been a very very brief conversation about about the three the beginning piece, but it sounds like for me that was one of your big learnings, and folks. As you're going to be able to tell from this entire episode, you're going to want to get in contact with Reverend Self. So I'm going to give you a doctorate in something. I'll give you an honorary doctorate in just in the crap of life or something like that. But no, in all seriousness, you're gonna want to know that you're gonna want to get in touch with Reverend Steele because he's been there. And for my money, the people you want to learn from, the people who have actually been there in the school of hard knocks, and the people who have made their mistakes and are willing to talk about it and admit it. So what I can really tell from our brief conversation on this is one of the big things that you learned was the fact that you did have it was rainbows and as the old song goes, rainbows and roses and whiskers on kittens and all the other stuff. These are a few of my favorite things. All the other fun, rainbows, unicorns, all the other fun stuff. And what in the end you realized is that while you don't want to marry somebody you hate, you have to marry somebody that you can interact with and is willing to have that give and take with you. So, folks, if you're listening to this and you're questioning on who you want to marry, if it is all rainbows, see if you can interact with that person. Don't try to start a fight, but put yourself in a situation where you want to interact with that person and see how it goes because you could find you've got somebody there that you just don't want to be with because they don't interact with you the same way, right, Reverend Steele?
Yeah, and also you said don't pick a fight, but personally I advise people pick a fight. and deliberately so. I'm sorry, I make no apologies for saying it that way. Pick a fight, and when I say pick a fight, kind of get under their skin, because you see, a serial killer can be your best friend and so quiet and so nice, and you think, wow, this person is just an angel from heaven, man, and you don't realize that they're suppressing a lot of anger. They're suppressing a lot of hatred, and life is full of triggers that come at unusual times. And if you have a courtship that does not trigger that person's anger buttons or that person's frustrated buttons, I promise you that when you get into a marriage, there's some dynamics that we're going to talk about down the road. But when you get married, some realities are going to click in. The realities of you belong to me. And we don't like to say that, but that is a reality that changes dynamics.
Yeah.
It changes person's behavior, their attitude, their concept, the way they look at life, the way they look at things. And because of those dynamics, if you get that person angered when you belong to them, you'll see a different side that you might be shocked about. And that's a reality. That's not, you ain't gonna get that in no textbook. You get that from somebody who's been there, seen it happen over and over again, and then they understand that those are just the dynamics of human existence and the dynamics of kind of an individual being themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so to kind of to I'll say move on to the turning point, because I think there's so much more about the beginning phase and so much more you learned. We're going to cover, I know, some of that later on Expert Focus. For the rest of it, we'll have to figure out how to do more videos, that sort of thing, because the message needs to get out. And if you're watching this video, well, you obviously are. If you heard me just ask you the question, you need to get in touch with Reverend Steele and see what he's got to offer in his programs, and just get to know him, because it's definitely going to be a benefit to you. So let's move into the turning point.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.